My mother's eyes locked on me across the polished oak table. "You'll never measure up to your sister," she said flatly. The clink of silverware against plates stopped instantly. My father gave a slow, approving nod. My sister Victoria smirked. But I rose to my feet, spine straight, and delivered words that dropped the room into a silence so sharp it hurt. "I'm Elena Ward, 28 years old, and for most of my life I've been the expendable one. The backup child, the shadow trailing behind the family's golden girl. The one who fought tooth and nail for every inch, while they handed Victoria praise, money, and open doors. When I wasn't pulling back-to-back deployments with my unit, I was grinding through college classes online, covering tuition with GI Bill scraps and side jobs. The weight of loans and rent felt endless, but I carried it without complaint. I never asked them for help. I just stood on the sidelines while Victoria was crowned again and again, treated like the sun we were all expected to orbit. If your family has ever treated you like you don't exist while placing someone else on a pedestal, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I read every comment because I know how deeply that kind of erasure carves into you. 3 months ago it came to a head. Another dinner, another performance. But this one had a theme: Victoria's big announcement. She'd landed some flashy job at a trendy PR firm, and my parents acted like it was a Nobel Prize. The dining room smelled of rosemary chicken and overpriced Cabernet. Mom had spent hours making Victoria's favorite dish from scratch. Flowers filled the table, china gleamed, and candles flickered like it was Christmas Eve. I came straight from a 14-hour duty shift at the base. Boots still dusty, uniform pressed but wrinkled from exhaustion. Every muscle in my body screamed for rest. "Elena, late again," Mom muttered, not even looking up. All her attention was fixed on Victoria, who was already halfway through a story about her modern office with kombucha taps and beanbag chairs. I slid into the last chair, the one with the crooked leg everyone avoided. Victoria sat across from me, glowing in a tailored dress worth more than my monthly paycheck, her blonde hair curled to perfection. Dad leaned in on her every word as though she was unveiling state secrets. "And then," Victoria said, swirling her glass of wine, "my manager told me he sees me as a future creative director. He thinks I could be leading campaigns in 6 months." "That's extraordinary, darling," Dad said, practically glowing. "They clearly know talent when they see it." I inhaled deeply, bracing myself. Then I opened my mouth to speak. "Speaking of work," I said, my voice steady despite the fatigue dragging at my body, "I received a commendation today." My quick response stabilized a soldier during cardiac arrest. The surgeon told me it was the difference between life and death. Mom barely flicked her eyes toward me. "That's nice, dear," she muttered, already pivoting back to Victoria. "Now tell us more about the creative team. You said they're so innovative." Dad leaned closer to my sister, nodding along as if I hadn't spoken at all. "Victoria's really on the fast track. This company knows how to recognize real potential, not like those dead-end jobs in uniform." And then came the moment that cut deeper than any battlefield wound. Mom turned to me, her expression sharp as a blade. I'd seen that sneer too many times, but this time she spoke the words out loud. "Elena, you'll never be as good as your sister. Victoria has ambition. She has vision. She's going places in life." The words slammed into me like recoil. But what hurt most wasn't her voice. It was Victoria's reaction. She didn't flinch, didn't speak up for me. She just smiled, sipped her wine, and basked in the glow. My eyes dropped to the half-eaten food on my plate, and the truth hit me harder than any insult. For 6 months, I'd been covering my parents' mortgage, $800 a month draining out of my pay. Meanwhile, they'd handed Victoria a $5,000 check to celebrate landing a job that paid less than my monthly salary. That dinner was only the beginning. 2 weeks later, I was scrolling through Instagram during a rare break at the base when the betrayal lit up my screen. Photos. Dozens of them. My parents, Victoria, and her boyfriend, lounging under palm trees in Hawaii. Crystal blue water, cocktails with umbrellas, all of them grinning like they'd found paradise. No one had mentioned a vacation. No invitation. Not even a passing word. I called my mother immediately. "Why didn't anyone tell me about this trip?" "Oh, Elena," she said breezily. "We didn't think you could get time off. You're always tied up with your duties." "You didn't ask," I said, my voice breaking despite myself. "You never even asked." "It was last minute," she replied. Victoria needed to relax after her first weeks on the job. You understand. I hung up, staring at more pictures. My family building sandcastles. My family clinking glasses at a high-end restaurant. My family walking arm in arm across a glowing sunset beach without me. Victoria texted 3 hours later. Sorry, thought you knew about Hawaii. You're always busy anyway, so we figured you wouldn't want to come. Hope you're not upset. Upset? I wasn't angry. I was gutted. But the humiliation that followed nearly crushed me. Victoria's 26th birthday. My parents rented out the most expensive restaurant in the city. An opulent space where one appetizer cost more than my weekly groceries. 50 guests filled the room, toasting their golden girl. I walked in after another punishing shift, still smelling faintly of military-grade disinfectant, wearing the best dress I owned. But compared to the glittering designer outfits around me, I may as well have been invisible. Mom rose with her glass of wine, voice trembling with pride. We are so proud of Victoria, she declared. She has always shone with natural talent and a future brighter than the stars. Some people are simply born to succeed. The room erupted in applause. Victoria's smile lit up the space like she was collecting an Oscar. And I sat there clapping weakly, my chest hollow. That's when Mrs. Alvarez, one of my mother's longtime friends, turned her eyes toward me. And what about you, Elena? I know Victoria's in marketing, but I've lost track of what you're doing these days. Before I could even open my mouth, my father cut in with a chuckle that made my face flush. Oh, Elena's still trying to figure things out. She's on base, sure, but Victoria's the one with the real career. She's the one who's really going places. The words burned. I had just completed another advanced certification in military medicine, serving in the ACU wing where soldiers clung to life by a thread. I held lives in my hands every single day. I earned more than Victoria ever had, but none of that mattered. To my father, none of it could ever shine as bright as his favorite daughter's glossy social media posts about brainstorming sessions and kombucha breaks. Mom raised her glass again, her eyes locked on Victoria while I sat just 3 feet away. We're just so proud of our successful daughter, she declared. The room quieted for a moment. Dozens of eyes turned toward me, some confused, some sympathetic. But my parents simply kept smiling, basking in Victoria's glow as if I weren't even there. That night I went home and cried until my eyes were swollen shut. But the worst betrayal was still to come. I stumbled across it by accident, helping my mother sort through a pile of bills. Mixed in with utility statements and credit card payments was paperwork that made my stomach drop. Victoria's student loan statements, every single one marked paid in full. I snatched them up, my hands trembling as I did the math. $45,000 in debt. Wiped clean. And it wasn't their money, it was mine. Every monthly mortgage contribution I'd been depositing had gone straight into clearing Victoria's loans. The next day I confronted Mom. You've been using my money to pay off Victoria's debt. She didn't even flinch. Victoria needs to focus on her career. She can't be distracted by student loans right now. You have stability, Elena. You can shoulder responsibility for yourself and help the family. My throat tightened with rage. I've been working nights and weekends to pay my own loans, while you've been funneling my money to clear hers. Don't be selfish, she scolded. Family supports family. Victoria's success benefits us all. And in that moment the truth hit like live fire. I wasn't helping with a mortgage. I'd been funding my sister's life, her freedom from debt, while drowning in my own. But what they didn't realize was that I had been documenting everything. Every transfer. Every receipt. Every statement. At first for taxes, never imagining I'd one day need them as evidence of betrayal. While they bragged about Victoria's $45,000 salary, they had no idea I was earning $89,000 of my own. They didn't know I'd already been accepted into an advanced practitioner program that would push me well into 6 figures. They thought I was silent. They thought I was weak. But I had been preparing. It was Jennifer, my commanding officer in the medical wing, a blunt, battle-hardened nurse in her 50s. Who finally looked me dead in the eye one afternoon during our break and said the words I hadn't realized I needed to hear. Elena, Jennifer told me one afternoon as we sat in the break room, her voice sharp with the kind of honesty only a veteran could carry. You're not helping your family, you're financing your sister's entire life while they tear you down. That isn't family duty. That's financial abuse. He helped me run the numbers. Over 2 years I had poured $47,000 into my parents' accounts. Not just the mortgage like I believed, but Victoria's loans, her car payments, even her credit card balances when she maxed them out on trips and clothes. That's when things took an even darker turn. Mom started dropping little hints about Victoria's engagement. Her boyfriend had proposed and the family was already plotting a lavish wedding. "Elena can cover catering," Mom said casually on the phone one evening. "She doesn't have the same expenses Victoria does. Your sister needs to save for her dress and the honeymoon." I hung up quietly, but my resolve hardened. That night I began printing every record I had: bank statements, transfer logs, loan receipts, building a folder thick enough to prove just how much I'd been exploited while they painted me as the disappointing child. Then I did the one thing that terrified me. I stopped making the mortgage payment. Within a week my phone lit up like an alarm. Mom's panicked voicemails. Dad's angry texts. Even Victoria called, suddenly interested in family finances, for the very first time. "Elena, what's going on with the mortgage?" Mom demanded. "The bank called, your payment's late." "I think it's time we sit down for a family dinner," I said, my tone calm, deliberate. "We'll talk about everyone's contributions." They agreed instantly, confident they could guilt me back into compliance. Saturday night came. Mom laid out an elaborate meal, hoping food would soften my defenses. Dad uncorked a bottle of wine like we were celebrating instead of circling a battlefield. Victoria swept in, flashing her diamond engagement ring, clearly eager to discuss wedding plans and my expected role in funding them. But they had no idea what I'd prepared. The lecture began before we even finished eating. "Elena," Dad sighed, "we need to talk about responsibility. Family obligations. You can't just stop supporting us because you're having some kind of emotional breakdown. This family depends on you," Mom added, her voice dripping with entitlement. "Victoria is building her future, and we all have to sacrifice to help her succeed." Victoria nodded along, blissfully unaware her success was bankrolled by me. "Elena, I know you're stressed, but come on, we're family. We look out for each other." Then Mom gave me that same cold sneer, that dismissive look that had haunted me since childhood. And she said the exact same words that had started everything. "You'll never be as good as your sister." I rose slowly, my movements deliberate, steady for the first time in months. My eyes locked on hers. "Then ask her to pay your bills," I said. The room froze. No one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the steady tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Reaching into my bag, I pulled out the folder I'd built, thick with evidence. One by one, I laid the documents across the table like cards in a high-stakes game. Each page landed with a soft thud that echoed louder than any shout. "I've given this family $47,000 in the last 2 years," I said, my voice even, unwavering. "I covered Victoria's student loans, your mortgage, her car payments, even her credit cards when she couldn't control her spending. All while you told me I wasn't good enough." Victoria's face drained of all color. She picked up one of the statements with trembling fingers, her eyes darting across the lines where her name appeared again and again in the memo. "Monthly mortgage, $2,800, I said, tapping the page. "Victoria's student loans, $650 a month. Her car payments, $400. And miscellaneous emergencies? $8,200 in total." Dad was rifling through the pile, his composure unraveling as he realized every cent was accounted for. Every lie documented. Every manipulation exposed. "Victoria," I said, my voice sharp but steady, "you didn't know I was paying your loans, did you?" She shook her head, tears welling. "Elena, I thought Mom and Dad were covering it. I didn't know it was you." "Of course you didn't," I replied. "They wanted you to believe you were thriving. That you were the star. That you were better than me." Both of my parents began stammering excuses, their voices tripping over each other in panic. I cut through the noise with words I'd been holding back for years. "You want to know the real difference between Victoria and me?" My voice rose, iron in every syllable. "I've been carrying this family on my back while she pretends she's successful. She earns less in a year than I do in 2 weeks, but you've spent years telling the world she's the accomplished one while I'm still figuring things out." The silence was suffocating. "My military medical income is $89,000 a year," I continued, locking eyes with both of them. "Victoria's startup gig pays $45,000. Yet all her achievements were funded by me, my sacrifices, my deployments, my paychecks. Victoria broke down, sobbing. The reality crushed her. Her degree, her debt-free life, her so-called freedom to chase a career. It had all been bankrolled by the sister she'd been taught to look down on. Wait, Elena, we can explain, Dad started. I raised a hand. No. You can't explain away 2 years of lies. You can't explain why you told me I'd never measure up while stealing my money to fund her life. You can't explain why you celebrated her victories when they were paid for with mine. I swept the documents back into the folder, tucked it under my arm and stood. The payments stop now. If Victoria's truly as good as you say, she can prove it with her own money. I walked out that night and never returned to their table. 2 weeks later, I relocated to another city and accepted a role as a military nurse practitioner. Salary: $120,000. A hospital that recognized my service, my discipline, and my skill. For the first time, I was treated as the professional I had always been, not the family scapegoat. Within 6 months, my parents' home was in foreclosure. Victoria's engagement crumbled under the weight of bills she couldn't pay without me. She called me crying, begging for help. But I was done being their safety net. And for the first time, their silence didn't hurt. It freed me. I finally understood that I had never needed their approval. I only needed to value myself. To recognize my own worth the way I'd been praying they would for years. I built a new life among colleagues who respected me without conditions, who saw my strength without needing proof. People who understood that success isn't something handed to you. It's something you fight for, sacrifice for, and earn. My family lost me that day and I never looked back. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is walking away from those who will never see your value, no matter how much evidence you lay in front of them. If you've ever been the one who gives everything while someone else gets the glory, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this resonates, hit subscribe. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop paying for someone else's dreams and start investing in your own.